talking about business intelligence applications, and a couple things that I showed you last class, and I recorded last class because there was a lot of hands-on work there as well, and I believe I put that up on Blackboard, hopefully I did, was using Excel to do some of the reporting tools that we talked about, like sorting and filtering and formatting and grouping and calculating. And also, we talked about something called an OLAP cube. Okay, an OLAP cube is a way to look at data by various dimensions and look at different measures, and we use the pivot table for that. So I know this is kind of where like my stats class and my MIS class converge, which always makes me happy. But here's what I'd like you to do. There's an assignment on Blackboard under Assignments, and it says Report Tools and OLAP Cube with Pivot Table. You guys see this? Okay, so here's what I would like you to do, okay? So here's the file we're going to use, sales January 2009.data. So this is an Excel file. Open that Excel file. I can't remember how much data it has, but not a great deal of data. More than I thought. So Control N. So it has about, looks like about 998 records or so. And I would like you to do the following things, okay? So make a copy of the sales worksheet and then rename it to question 1. So the original worksheet, you're going to make a copy of it, another tab, and rename that tab question 1. So when I grade this, right, I'm going to look at question 1, and did they do what I asked them to do for question 1? For question 1, you're going to take that worksheet, the question 1 worksheet, it's a copy of sales January 2009, with a 3-tier sort. Country at the top level, within country, state at the next level, and last name at the last level. All should be in ascending order, A to Z order. So you remember when we did the sort, you had to have level. Okay, so that's question 1. Any questions? You guys can do that. Okay. Make a copy of again, for question 2, worksheet. Make the worksheet a table. You remember we did that? You highlight it. Go up to Insert, click Table, yes. And then when you do that, you get those little filter buttons up top. Choose whatever table style you deem appropriate. That's kind of formatting, right? You like green, you like orange, you like blue. Knock yourself out. Filter table to only show transactions done in Quebec. Okay, that's in the state. That's file, but it should say fields in the state field. So you only want to see transactions done in Quebec. Okay. Make a copy again, question 3. Question 3, we're going to make a pivot table of all the data, okay? Rename the pivot table worksheet, question 3 PT for pivot table. Put channel on the rows and payment type on the columns. Those are dimensions, right? Those are things we are grouping by in our OLAP cube. And put price in the data values and change the price field setting to average. Did I show you guys how to do that? So in the field settings, it might be sum, it might be count, I'm not sure, but you can change that to average. Does that make sense? Okay, that's an example of grouping and calculating. Make another copy of the January 2009 worksheet and rename it to question 4. Make another pivot table, rename the pivot table worksheet to OLAP. Create an OLAP cube with the following dimensions: product, channel, and country. The measure should be sales price. Add a filter using payment type. So you could use this with a slicer. You could do that payment type. Remember we added the slicer, or there's a group for the filter itself. All right. Save the resulting workbook. So all these sheets, save that workbook. It's a XLSX, and upload it to this assignment, and I'll grade it online. Any questions? So you guys think you could do this? Yes. And I think I put up the video. Let me make sure that I did. Of last class. Is that 11/9? Yeah, today's 11th, right? So that's the video where I go through how to do that. So if you want to rewatch that, okay, that's going to be due Monday. So you have all weekend, Monday at midnight, right? So you have all day Monday as well. So upload that, 15 points, just to show that you could do those things. Any questions on that? All right, fantastic. So then let's go back to the material. And really this is, I think, in my opinion, kind of why I skipped ahead to it, one of the more exciting chapters in MIS because it's so topical. It's, we're creating more and more data, and businesses are analyzing that data in a lot of new ways to create information so that they can make better decisions. And there are a lot of good terminology in here that we used, and we're going to go a little bit further. So we talked about reporting tools. We talked about OLAP cubes. We talked about an RFM analysis was a cool thing. We talked about drill down. We're going to talk about, if we go back to this, let's go back to this first slide. And just to kind of level set where we're at. We first talked about, well, where does data come from? When we talk about business intelligence applications, we said, hey, operational, just by doing what we do, like selling things, we create data. Tracking customers, social data, purchase data, employee knowledge. These are all sources of data. We talk about, all right, once we get that data, we bring it in, we got to clean it. Remember, garbage in, garbage out. We talked about dirty data, inconsistent, all those good things. Where we're kind of at right now is perform analysis, right? And we first talked about reporting. And we talked about the 5 things we do: grouping, calculating, formatting, sorting, filtering. Those are reporting functions that we can do to make data into information. That's what we're going to do with Excel. And we talked about OLAP cube. What we're going to focus on today are these 2: data mining and also big data. So what is data mining? What do you think data mining is? What is data mining? Have you ever heard that term? I'm going to mine that data. What do you think that is? What do you think data mining is? Well, if I'm mining for gold, what am I doing? What am I doing? Go ahead. Yeah, through what? A bunch of stuff, right? To look for a bunch of rock, a bunch of sand, whatever the hell it is, to find something valuable, right? So think about that. That's kind of what data mining is all about. We have all of this data, right? All this data that's created. You're creating data as you walk around here on campus, as you register for classes, as you swipe at Torvian, you're creating data. Your Fitbit's generating data. We want to look through all that data, analyze it in such a way that we find something valuable, something that we can use to make a decision. And we're going to talk about, and this is kind of a slide on data mining, but there's 2 major branches, the way we categorize data mining. And the first one is unsupervised data mining. Unsupervised data mining, and with the unsupervised part, doesn't mean we're not overlooking it. It means we don't have a prior hypothesis or model. Like, we didn't say, hey, we think this causes this. We don't have a hypothesis going into it. I didn't say, like, hey, I think SAT score is a good predictor of GPA, right? I just said, let's go through this data and see if we can find patterns, see if we can find relationships, see if we can find ways that things are related together, okay? That's unsupervised data mining. Findings are based solely on data analysis. Hypothesis model created, explain patterns found. Example, we're going to talk about something called cluster analysis. Cluster analysis, if we look at a bunch of data, and maybe we have a bunch of customers, and we say, these customers are all kind of alike, and maybe we give them a term. We say these are empty nesters, right? And then we also have a cluster of customers who perhaps are young millennials, right? And we cluster them. We go through and say these customers have like attributes, and we make them into cluster. That's cluster analysis. We're going to talk about a couple very important unsupervised data mining techniques in a moment. The next one, though, let's talk about what supervised data mining is. The big difference about supervised versus unsupervised: supervised use an a priori model, meaning we have a hypothesis going into this. We think that the number of hours you spend watching Netflix is inversely proportional to your GPA, right? That might be my model going into this. We think your age determines how many cell phone weekend minutes you use. So we go into something like that, and we see if there's evidence to support our hypothesis, right? A good example of this is when we talk about things like decisions colleges make, for example. We talk often about two things determining, how well a student is going to do. This is old data, but something I did a while ago. So, what do we think determines how well students are going to do in college when they're seniors? What are the two measures that we think determines how well they're going to do in college? GPA, and what else do you think? Yeah, their test score, whether ACT or SAT, yes? So that is our assumption, that those things are related, that your high school GPA and your SAT score are related to how well you do. So that is an example of like a supervised data mining technique, yes? And we say that's our relationship, we think it's there. And here's some analysis. This is some analysis I did a long time ago. So if we look, this kind of grouped them into quadrants, and this was just, so this is SAT score on the x-axis. I think the average was about 910, and then I think the high school GPA was 3.25. So if you think about that, that kind of creates four quadrants. These are people with higher than average SAT, higher than average GPA. These are people with higher than average SAT, but low high school GPA. These are people with low SAT, high high school GPA. These are low SAT, low high school GPA. So this was our data, right? This was our incoming data, and we wanted to see if there was a relationship. So, the first thing we graphed in is after the end of the freshman year, we had, and I think we maybe had 40 freshmen this year. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 that had a 3.5 or higher at the end of their freshman year. Where do you notice most of those are? Not all of them, right? It's not a perfect model, but where are most of those at? Yeah, there's a lot in that first quadrant. So one of the things that might say to us is, hey, if to do very well your freshman year, it really does help to have a high SAT and high GPA, right? So that's the blue one. And if we put in, these are the people that did well, right? 3.0 to 3.5 as well. Those purple dots, that's doing good your freshman year. Because freshman year is tough, right? It's a big adjustment. And what do you notice about that? What would you notice about that? Where are those dots at? How are they distributed?
It's more like central on the graph.
Okay, they're central. And how about in the quadrants, Daniel? There's 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, and 4 here. More evenly distributed than the other one, right? So, there are people that had, lower than average SAT, lower than high, that did pretty well, yes? And then if we look at, like the next group down, 2.5, that's the green triangle, 2.5 to 3.0. There's one high SAT, high here. There's one high SAT. There's 2 here and 1 here. So there are 5 students. 1, 2, 3, 6 students. Once again, kind of everywhere, right? Kind of everywhere. If we look at the next one, 2.0 to 2.5, and that's the squares. Where are those at mostly? Those are mostly at the bottom, in that bottom quadrant. And then if we look at, there's only, looks like 3 maybe that were below 2.0 at the end of their freshman year, and they're all here. So what did we learn from this exercise? So that would be an example of a supervised data mining technique that we're trying to see if there was a relationship between those things. And this is a visual way to represent it. There's numerical ways to do it as well. But what did you get from that analysis? Maybe you did get this, but what did you get from that analysis? If you had to make a conclusion of that analysis. Your boss said, what do you conclude from that data? Come on. Talk to me.
There is a correlation between high SATs and high school GPA and how they perform their freshman year.
Okay, and what else did you learn? So you're saying of the top performers, the ones that perform well, seem to be a higher correlation. But how about this group and this group and this group, like this group, which is good, right? That's good your freshman year. Anywhere in that range, that's good. where did these come from?
It's still like average. They didn't do poorly, but they didn't do their best capabilities, I guess.
But where were they originally though? Like, you know, this is good, 2.5. Where are the green triangles and the purple dots? Are they clustered in one place? Not necessarily, right? So, you know, what we kind of learn from this, and how about the bottom ones, the below 2.0 and the where are they at? They are kind of clustered, aren't they? So it almost looks like, to me, you know, what would you say at the end of this? What would you say at the end of it? You know, because it's kind of too simple to say, yeah, you know, there's a correlation here. And if we look at a correlation, we look at numerically, hey, between GPA and college GPA, there's a stronger correlation than SAT score. And we could do a regression analysis on this as well and try to relate the two. But overall, what would you say? What would you say as a result of this? Because it's too simple to say, hey, they're related. Because that's too simplistic. Yes.
There's like a relation, or I think direct relation between like the top two, like the high SAT, high GPA, and low SAT, low GPA.
Yeah, I would say to do really well your freshman year, you know, it seemed like they were a strong predictor, right? Not a perfect predictor, but the people that did really well typically came in with good things, right? The people that did not so well also were had bad indicators. But in that middle group, man, they were everywhere, right? There were some that were high SAT, high GPA, low SAT, and they both got a 3.2 or 3.3, right? And it's same discipline, business. So it seems like, you know, there is something to this, but it's not the be all and end all, right? It's not a perfect predictor. There is a relationship, right? And you can probably say, you know, with a lot of confidence that, you know, if the people that do well, 3.5 or higher, typically most of them come in with high SAT, high GPA, but not always, right? People that do poorly at the end of freshman year, typically they come in with low SAT, but not always. And the people that do well, heck, you know, throw out the numbers, right? That do like 3.0, throw out the numbers. They come out from all walks of life, right? Maybe they didn't have the best high school GPA, but they rededicated themselves. So this is an example of, you know, trying to see if there's a relationship. That's a supervised data mining technique. We're trying to see if there's a relationship between these two values, and we go through that. Another technique we use is something called regression analysis. And I think if you had my class, there's no markers in here. Regression analysis, if you had stats, and I know many of you have stats right now, regression analysis is see if there's a relationship between the X variable and the Y variable, right? We did things like, is there, classic example I use in class all the time, temperature and how much ice cream I sell at my ice cream stand, right? So I have that data. I want to see if there's a relationship. I perform a regression analysis. It gives me an equation that says, you know, Y is equal to 10x or 100x plus 500, where every temperature, every degree the high temperature goes up, I sell another $100 worth of ice cream. You guys recall that? So that's another, like regression analysis is another form of supervised data analysis. I'll be right back. I'm going to go get a marker to do this next one. Okay, so let's go back to these slides. So we're talking about supervised and unsupervised data techniques. And this one is one that I know you've seen play out. Maybe didn't understand how it works, but I know you've seen it play out. It's something called market basket analysis. So there's two things in the world of sales. There's something called cross-selling and something called upselling. You guys know what those are? What's cross-selling? What's upselling? What are cross-selling? People work in a retail environment. Any of you guys work in a retail environment and your boss asks you to cross-sell things or upsell things? No? None of you work retail? You sell beer, don't you? Okay. Do you do any cross-selling opportunities? You know what I mean by that? No, they did. What is it, Danielle?
Like, you're selling clothing or something like that, and like you sell one item, like, oh, it looks good with this, and try to cross-sell things.
Very good. So someone buys, pardon my fashion sense, someone buys a blouse, and I didn't like to say that word, blouse, but someone, you sell a blouse and you say, you know what, there's a scarf back there that looks wonderful with that blouse, right? That is like a cross-sell opportunity, yes? Let's talk about like a hardware store example, right? You buy paint, and they say, you know, the paintbrushes are right there, right? If you're buying paint, you're probably buying paintbrushes, or maybe drop cloths or rollers or something like that, right? So in a beer distributor, I don't know, cross-selling opportunities are things that people buy together oftentimes. No? Not really? Okay. I guess you're just buying a case of drinking. All right. So that's a cross-sell. What's an upsell? What's an upsell? So that's a cross-sell. Like, hey, these two things, and you see this all the time. Like, you go to Amazon, you buy something that says, hey, people that bought this also bought this item, right? What's an upsell? So that's a cross-sell. Like things that are packaged together. What's like an upsell? Yeah, go ahead.
Additional charges on top of that, like services on top.
Sure, like, yeah, I want to upsell, you know, add the extended warranty, right? Or, you know, we can etch your name on the back of that for another $5. Or would you like dessert with that, right? That's an upsell, right? You're trying to upsell, you know, would you like coffee at the end of it? That's an upsell opportunity. But cross-selling is really benefited from something called market basket analysis. And what market basket analysis is we have all kind of data on ourselves, right? So we could say, you know, the customer ABC came in, they bought 10 items, and these are the 10 items. So we don't just treat them as 10 separate sales. We say this is one transaction that included this blouse and this scarf, right? So 10 other people bought this blouse and scarf together. Hey, maybe it's a good combination. And I want to provide Danielle that information when someone buys that blouse to say, hey, people like that scarf as well, right? You may do that kind of stuff as well. Maybe subconsciously you say, hey, I know she bought the pumpkin beer. You know, next time in, come and try this other type of pumpkin beer or whatever the hell it might be. Yes? What's that? Snacks.
Like we have like a whole bunch of like snacks and like like you want some beef jerky or
okay.
something like that.
All right. So yeah, so that happens all the time. So we can look at those kind of things. Now, how does that work? Okay. Well, let's try to walk through an example. And this is an example of a dive shop, which I know nothing about scuba diving, but I know what masks are, tank, fins, weights, and dive computers are, right? So we have 400 transactions. Let's set the stage here. We have 400 transactions at our dive shop. You know, we look at those transactions, and of those 400 transactions, 270 included a mask. 200 included a tank. 280 included fins, 130 included weights, and 120 included a dive computer, right? So of the 400 transactions, and if you notice, if I add all those up, they add up to over 400 items. So I had 400 transactions, but if I add those up, that's 470, what is that, 750, 880, basically 1,000, right? So I sold 1,000 items in 400 transactions, 400 sales, yes? So if we look, there's some evidence here that kind of helps us. If you look at this, what sells together a lot? If you look at let's look at the top. What sells together a lot? Yes. Okay, so I can see that from up above, and I'll show you how we get to that. We see, hey, 270 times we sold a mask, and of those 270 times, 250 of those times, 250 of the 270 times, it included the person bought fins as well, right? So that's useful to us. But let's go a little further, and I'll show you how what these terms come out to be. There's also something called, support. Okay, support is so that doesn't really look at the cross listing. It says of the 400 transactions, all right, 270 included a mask, so that was 67%. 280 included fins, so that's 70%. Now that's useful. I can see, the combinations and the percentage. And if you say, well, what percentage of all the transactions included fins and masks? 62%. What percentage of all transactions included a dive computer and fins? It looks like only 5%, right? So we can see kind of the percentage of transactions that are bought together. That's called support, like the support of the items. But what's really useful to us, what's really useful to us is something called it's called confidence, and it's a conditional probability. So if we look at this, Taylor is right. She said, it looks like fins and masks are bought together a lot. So if you guys remember, this is from people that took my Stat 301 currently or before, we have something called conditional probability. And what we can say is, hey, what's the probability that someone bought fins given that we know they bought a mask? And let's not do the stats, but let's figure that out. So how many people bought a mask? Let's just overall, how many transactions included a mask? 270. Of those 270, how many also included fins? 250. Okay, so 250 divided by 270. If I do that on my calculator, okay, it's going to come up to, let's see, 250 divided by 270. That comes up to roughly, that's right there, 93%. So what it's saying, think about what that's saying. That confidence measure, it's saying, given that someone bought a mask, 93% of the time, they also bought fins with it, yes? So if someone comes up to your register and buys a mask, and I want to use market basket analysis. Now, you're maybe an hourly employee, and you don't care about the bottom line of this company. It's not your company. You don't care. It's just another item for you to run through the register, right? So you don't care if they buy fins or not. So we have a system that does this analysis for us and says, hey, the person just bought a mask, and maybe it comes up on the cash register. See if they want fins as well. Ask the question, would you like fins with it? It's kind of like fries with that. Would you like fins? You see that we have fins in the back. You guys know what I'm saying? Now, that is called confidence, right? So if we think about it, there's also something called lift. Lift is improvement. So overall, if we think about it, 62% of transactions included fins, but we know if they bought a mask, that goes up to 92%, right? So 62% of all transactions bought a fin. So if they bought a mask, that goes up to 93%. So if we look at that ratio, 93% divided by, 62.5%, it comes out to 1.32. And it's called lift. What that means is if someone buys a mask, they're 32% more likely to buy fins than if they just came into the store blindly. You know what I'm saying? Like it improves the performance of the selling of fins. Because they bought a mask, they're more likely to buy a fin. Now, anything over 1 is positive, anything under 1 is negative, meaning if they buy this, they're less likely to buy this. So give me something that has negative lift. Not negative lift, but it decreases the likelihood. Give me something that decreases the likelihood. Let's look at dive computer. Let's just look at the dive computer line, right? Tell me something about the dive computer line. Come on. if someone came into your store and bought a dive computer, what might you recommend that they also purchase? A mask, because they're 11% more likely to buy a mask if they bought a dive computer, right? That's what it tells us. How about the other things? Tank, fins, and weights. Yes. Or fins, or a tank, right? All three of those things are less than one. Like, the likelihood that they'll buy those things goes down because they bought a dive computer in this transaction. Why do you think that is? I don't know anything about scuba diving, but this is my supposition. A dive computer, I don't know what the hell that is, but it's probably something you buy, like, you know, to like augment your diving experience. Like, you've probably already been diving, you know, for several months or years. I don't know what the hell you do. But then you say, I'm going to upgrade my experience and I'm going to buy a dive computer, right? Like, you know, I think about, you know, I started riding a bike. I think I've told you guys that. So there's things I bought when I started riding a bike. And then after I got into it, I started buying things that were like a little more advanced. You know what I'm saying? But if you buy those things, you're like, oh, this person already probably has. They're buying a dive computer. They probably already have tank, fins, and weights. Well, you know, what the book says is, well, why they're more likely to buy a mask after buying a dive computer is you need a better mask to be able to read the dive computer. So that's why the percentage went up. But you already probably have tanks, fins, and weights. Does that make sense? So when I go into, you know, Amazon.com, if you think about it, if I go in and search for, I don't know, let's say I search for, let's see a product. Barbies, no. I don't know. Polished dress shoes. Customers who viewed this item also viewed these items, right? Now that's not a sell, it's not a market basket analysis because they didn't sell those items, but they know in John Miko's viewing experience, well, not John Miko, but 1,000 other customers who viewed this item in a viewing experience also tended to view this shoe and this shoe and this shoe. So when John Miko goes in and views that shoe that I just viewed, hey, show them those other shoes that other customers looked at. Further, right? I don't know. So this is going to be probably my wife buying. So boom, boom, boom. I'm trying to find one. Customers who bought this item also bought. So there's bought and also viewed. You know what I'm saying? So these are, and it looks like it's the same here. I'm trying to think. Let's buy a what the hell dive computer. Oh, thank you, all departments. I guess the watches are dive computers, I'm not sure. Okay, but frequently bought together is an example of cross-selling. And what they do, you know, they even bundle it for you and make it easy. That's consumer behavior. They say, hey, you want to put this with, I don't know what the hell that is. Submarine light diving flashlight, underwater torch, gear keeper. But you notice, you know, there's no mask with it. There's no fins with it because they're assuming, you know, that you already have that. If I do scuba mask, let's see what that comes up with. So if I buy, that wasn't a mask, was it? That mask. And I look. Well, they send me, you probably also need a snorkel. It looks like a snorkel and a strap cover, right? That's all based on, like, they don't have like a concierge there, a person. They don't have a scuba diving expert that says, you know, recommend this if they buy this and that, right? That's not some person doing that. All that recommendation comes from market basket analysis, right? Just from the data itself, doing the business intelligence on that data. Where else do we see this kind of stuff? Where else do you see this kind of stuff? So buying things. You know, and stores do a lot of that, right? Not just at the cash register, but where they place items. Think about it. You know, what's at the end caps of the paint aisle? Well, there's paintbrushes, right? They hang paintbrushes there, or they hang painting caps. Electronics, what do they hang at the end caps of that? They hang batteries. It's their way of placing things to say, oh yeah, I pick up these, right? You think about that? That's all based on market basket analysis. It's all based on that. How about entertainment-wise? Give me an example of where this is used entertainment-wise. You guys use these entertainment channels. Where would you see this entertainment-wise? Where, like recommendation engines? Yes, Dan.
I was gonna say like video game consoles. It's like buy the console get like free games or something.
For sure, right? That happens. How about like with movies? Like, give me an example. Yeah, think about Netflix, right? Right. And they tell you, what do they tell you? How do they improve the recommendations for you? What do they ask you to do so that they can improve your recommendations? The star things, right? Because they said, all right, let's see, Malik gave this 5 stars, this 4 stars, this 3 stars. You know, people like Malik. They kind of like movies like this. You know, also gave 5 stars to this. So I'm thinking about it. It's kind of like cluster analysis. I'm putting Malik in this, people that like this movie, and this movie. And these people also tend to like this movie, so that's what I'm going to recommend to him, right? So they try to know you, even though they don't know you. Isn't that kind of crazy? Right? You think about it, if your best friend recommends something, that's because they have a relationship with you and they know you and they know what you like and what you don't like. You think Netflix knows you? You know, they probably do though, right? Because of the data they have captured on you, right? It's amazing. It's amazing the recommendations they come up with. Pandora, do you guys use Pandora or Spotify? What do you guys use now? I don't even know. Okay, I never left Pandora. So what do you guys use? Spotify. Think about that, okay? Based on you liking these songs and playing these songs over and over again, we're gonna throw this song out, you know. And if you like it, okay, we're gonna try to extend it. And there's something called what's kind of great is there's something called the long tail. So if you ranked like movies, songs, whatever, 1 to 1,000,000, right? Like this is the best song that's playing right now, the most popular song, and this is the 1,000,000th popular song. All right, let's think about that. If I am a retailer, Malik and you guys want to be quiet, please? There's electrical on. So if I rank things 1 to 1,000,000, if I'm a retail store and I have limited location, what am I going to do? What am I going to stock? Well, I'm going to stock maybe the first 10% of items, right? That's it, because I only have so much room. Yes, that's all I have. And we know that like 90% or 80% of our revenue comes from the top 10 selling items. Think about that. Like, you know, top 10%, 80% of our revenue comes from the top 10% selling items. So if I'm Walmart, I'm Netflix, I'm not Netflix, I'm, you know, physical, that's all I'm going to stock. But what happens, and if you think about it, if you're a radio station, you know, you're going to play the top 20 hits over and over again. But when you get a system like Pandora or a Netflix, it figures out like, well, I'm going to drive demand, what they call down the tail, right? Like, hey, it seems like you like these artists. Well, there's an artist down here that seems like, you know, similar, has the same kind of, you know, vibe, and people that like this also seem to like this, and they play that for you, and you're like, wow, that was good. I never would have discovered that on my own, right? Maybe it's some arcane movie that isn't in the theaters, right? It's some kind of independent movie, independent music, and you like that, and then because you like that, you know, it drives you down the tail even further, right? They say, oh, you like that, how about this? So think about it. Data can even change, you know, what you're exposed to and your likes and your wants. And it can help people down the tail, right? It can help people that are independently creating music. So all this stuff is driven by the data. So market basket analysis is a very, very powerful tool. All right, the last technique we're going to talk about today is also unsupervised data mining, and it's something called decision trees. Okay? Decision trees are a way for me to look at data and say, how can I use this past information to make decisions going forward? And these decision trees can look like this, okay? So this is, we went back through all of our, say we're a bank, we went through all of our loans, okay? And all of our loans that we've had for the last 20 or 30 years. And we've looked at things like the credit score, we looked at, you know, the how much past due the customer was, we looked at the balance of the loan. And we came up with, if we look at our loan portfolio, we came up with percentages of how many of these loans went bankrupt or defaulted on us, right? How can I use that information going forward? Well, if I know that 80% of loans below 400 credit score went defaulted for me, how would I factor that into my decision going forward? How would I factor that into my decision going forward? Tim?
Higher rates, or interest rates.
I would either do one of two things. I would say, hey, you know, if they're in this situation, don't even give them a loan, like you said, right? Or like you said, make sure it's a higher rate, because we know, historically speaking, people like this defaulted at a much higher rate, so we have to make it up on other customers. Dr. Fry kind of uses a decision tree as he admits students to our MBAs, okay, our MBA program. What do you think he looks at to admit students to our MBA program? Because he's kind of like the committee of one, like he's the admissions committee for the MBA program. What do you think he looks at? Okay, very good. That's a measure he looks at. What else? What's that?
Work experience.
That's important, yes, because that helps you, right? That helps you. What else? Very good. So there's probably a little more than that, but a couple things. Two things he looks at is he takes, I think he has a little formula he does. He takes your high school or your college GPA, and I think he multiplies it by 200, right? So that gives you like an 800 score, right? If you have a 4.0, you get 800. And then he takes your GMAT score, which is out of 800, and adds that in. And if that comes out to, and I can't remember the line, but I think it's about 1,200 or something, you're in, right? You're pretty much in. Like if you're over 1,200, you're in. The other thing he factors in, though, is if you are a working professional and have work experience, like you're a vice president of a company, well, even if you're maybe 10 years ago, your college GPA was only 2.3, but now you're a working adult, maybe you just took the GMAT and didn't knock it out of the park, maybe that's a lower bar for you, right? Because he knows based on past experience, that working adults tend to do better in the program than people fresh out of college, right? So what he's done, and he hasn't done this kind of mechanism, but he knows, you know, for the last 25 years we've had an MBA program, he knows every one of those students, and he knows the ones that did well and their backgrounds and the ones that didn't do so well, right? So he has built himself basically a decision tree to help admit or not admit students, right? Also based on the data. All right, so that's all I have today. We are going to talk on Monday about something called big data. Okay, big data is taking a lot of data from a lot of different sources and trying to boil it down to those nuggets of information that are important. Have a great weekend. Which one? Oh, okay. You started already.
Yeah.